Welcome back to the Addicted Motors YouTube channel. I'm an idiot, and I bought a Saaburu. And I don't know if you can hear that. It's making noises. Oh man. So I'm looking at a Saaburu. It says Saaburu. I don't know. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here. I'm gonna check back. God damn it. So I just bought this. You can't really see it, but it's a 5-speed. It is the Forester Subaru 9X. What is this? It's a 92X, and I've never owned a Subaru, and I'm not sure how broken it is either. I didn't do any. I didn't even check the oil. I jumped in. I let it idle, make sure the head gasket wasn't shot. And I said, here's the money. I don't know if that's the best negotiation tactics. All right, it's dark. The windshield, I can barely see out of it. Can you hear that in the video? I mean, it's making some vibration-y noises and some tire noise, and it's all there. So what do I know about the car? It was owned by the guy's son. Not a great sign. It was a college car. It's probably been beat on pretty bad. It's got 216,000 miles, and it runs. You know, that's really it. I haven't even really looked. It's been dark. I kind of bought it in the dark, which is not the way to buy cars, but it's the way we bought this one. Let's drop it down a gear. See if it'll slip. I don't know. Road holding. Man, there is a weird belt noise or something in there too. I don't know what that is. All right, heater circuit. It's probably because there's no cool nose attached to the heater core, but I'm gonna look those up. So right off the bat, this was cheap. It was probably the cheapest Impreza Saaburu 92X in the country, and it was cheap for one specific reason, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I paid $1,200 for this car, and this is a 2.5 naturally aspirated manual Saaburu, and that's not. I mean, and in this current automotive market, that's really all it's worth. When you see what is actually the problem with it, but to find a car that's kind of fairly priced due to the work it needs these days is almost impossible to find. So let's check it out. So this is one of those ugly ducklings or oddballs. This was an odd collaboration between Saab and Subaru during the GM era, where they decided that they needed something a little more fun and mid-market, and during that time, kind of owned by GM, they decided to grab what at the time was a Subaru Impreza and slap a Saab badge on it, and that's what this is. So this is an Impreza. There's very little of anything Saab about it besides the front end, which honestly I do like the look of the front end for this one better. This is the 2.5 naturally aspirated boxer engine, and this one is a 5-speed, which is really the reason why I bought it. They did come with, I think, a 2-liter turbo, which was pretty interesting, and I also think this features like an STI steering rack. It's a little bit quicker apparently than other models, but yeah, here she is, and now that we're in the daylight, do a little more thorough walk around to kind of check this bad boy out. So the Saaburu, and actually the previous owner, the license plate said Saaburu, which is pretty interesting. Bought it from a guy. This was his son's car. It was his son's college car, which is a good and a bad thing. I went to, I believe, Virginia Tech, so that's good as far as the rust is concerned. There's really not any rust on the car, which is good. And it's interesting to say that about a semi-modern car. I mean, 2006. But this one, again, it looks pretty clean underneath. So yeah, let's just check out what the outside of it looks like. These plastic pieces unfortunately have some paint fade, but the rest of the body's okay actually. Again, Saab badging on the back. It's not an arrow, unfortunately, but again, not bad for the price I paid for it, which is not very much at all. But it was cheap for a reason. I'll get into that in a little bit. But a little bit of body damage, a couple scrapes here. Probably campus parking can be blamed for that one. But the body's pretty straight, a couple dents, little hood dings and whatnot, and some pretty terrible. It's funny, this color is the same blue, or looks to be the same blue as my 2006 Suburban that I had, or 2007 Suburban, which is interesting because it had the same kind of terrible touch-up paint that didn't really match very well. It looks like it's got wheels from a Legacy on it, and this tire isn't matching. The tread depth looks to be about the same, but unfortunately that tire doesn't look to match the rest of them. No fog lights. I mean, this is a base model. I don't even know they made them in this configuration as the Saaburu as a base model, and it's just it's a stripper. No sunroof, minimal packaging everywhere. Even on the inside, there's not a lot of pretty much anything. It's got Subaru mats, which I'm sure were added at some point in the owner experience, but smells like a Subaru, which is very, very distinct smell. Actually, they all have that kind of wet, carpety smell, if that makes any sense. But jumping on the inside, you got power windows, which is pretty wild. And you've got, again, I'm not a Subaru guy. I've never owned a Subaru. I've never messed with it ever. My girlfriend had one and we got rid of it immediately. Again, they're not bad cars. They're just not really my thing. I just don't know that much about them either. But it's got a Subaru deck and the Subaru HVAC controls, which most of the ones I saw online when I was doing a little bit of research on the car had different gauges. I mean, at least different knobs and stuff. So this is very much a Subaru still. Subaru shift boot. I mean, and look and see all the knockouts. It's very empty around here. I haven't even figured out how to dim the control, dim the gauges or anything like that, because there's just nothing. So yeah, inside's pretty clean. Like I said, I paid nothing for this car, which is really the reason why I bought it. It was a really good deal, and I really couldn't pass it up. So the plan today is to do a quick tune-up on it and see where we're at. But before that, I want to show you why this car was so cheap. All right, coming around to the front, this is the naturally aspirated 2.5 liter Boxster engine. And it's not really in all that terrible condition. A little bit of surface rust here and there, but that's pretty consistent with the Northeast car. I drove it home. It drove fine. I think the first issue that you kind of saw in the quick driving video of me trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with this thing a few minutes ago was the womp, womp, womp sound was a nail in the back tire. So that was an easy $10 fix. The other kind of feels and what that I had was right here, and this is why it was cheap. I don't know if you can see in there, we are missing some hoses, and those hoses go to the heater core. And the heater core in this model, and actually apparently it's worse in later models, but where I had to figure out whether or not that this is the $1,000 heater core fix, or it's the slightly easier one. So that's the research I'm going to be trying to do to hopefully get that replaced. If I don't get it replaced, it's going to become a cheap car challenge car. But I kind of want to breathe life back into this thing because it is worth saving. And I think it just needs a little bit of maintenance and loving on. It's been sitting for a while, and I'm going to give it the quick once over and try to make a car out of it, I guess, is the gist of that. But it's semi-dry under there. None of the boots are leaking or anything like that. It's something I always forget to check when I'm looking at these cars, whether or not, especially the four-wheel drive one, these CV joint boots are leaking. A little bit of moisture around the rear diff, but that's pretty easy to check. But the subframe looks good. Not a whole lot of rust under there at all. I mean, it's super clean, which is great. I'd rather have less paint and no rust than rust and less paint. So again, not totally unhappy with this purchase. So let's fire it up, listen to it run, and then go ahead and change the oil. All right, so again, just a quick recap of the car. Pros: okay tires, clutch feels okay, seems to run fine, would probably pass inspection, paint is okay, is a Subaru, Had the timing belt replaced less than 10,000 miles ago. And that's really about it. Runs and drives. That's really about all you can ask for something of this mileage and here in vintage. Cons, heater core is disconnected, probably because it was leaking. You know, needs little things here and there. Cosmetics aren't great. It looks like someone took the time to buff out the headlights, so that's always good. Saves me something a little bit, some effort on the elbow grease side. What else? Well, unknown maintenance history. I mean, I've got some records. It looks like they maintain things, but not to a certain standard. So, again, we're gonna go ahead and change the oil and take it for another ride. All right, so there's it running. It sounds fairly healthy. It's got, 216,000 miles on it. He didn't say when he changed oil last. That's what I'm gonna do next. It's got an incredibly tiny filter, which is wild. So yeah, and actually look, it looks like the timing belt was replaced, wow, fairly recently, which is great. I didn't even know that. The owner didn't even mention that to me. So that actually, again, I'm looking for something else that, makes me want to, again, save the car, fix the heater core, and kind of make it, worth something at this point, because everyone wants me to ramp it, and that's probably what I'm not going to do with it, because it's still a fairly modern car. It's an interesting car, and it's got a 5-speed. It should be pretty fun to drive. So there's the motor. Sounds pretty healthy. Odd boxer setup. Again, not a Subaru guy, but it seems to be in pretty decent condition. So right here is you've got the, let's call it the Addicted Motors Special Tune-Up Treatment. Berryman, because it's cheaper than Seafoam. Mass Airflow Cleaner, because no one ever cleans it. And there's always buildup on mass airflow filters. And a quick oil change. This whole combination, I had that, cost $35. And this oil apparently is, I can do the change in like 20, 30 minutes. Or even less than that if I can find a catch pan that's not full. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that stuff. And again, not gonna notice any immediate changes, but just something to kind of baseline the car to kind of give us an idea of where it needs to be and where it's going. All right, here's the underside. Again, pretty darn clean. Got a couple little oil leaks, but that's pretty normal for a car with this many miles. And that tiny little oil filter. I don't know how I'm gonna zoom out here. Get that out. That is small. But everything else looks pretty easy and straightforward from here. So let me go ahead and start changing on her. So I had a brief pause in making the video for the oil change because I couldn't get the old filter off. And I think that's something that just happens when some guys are doing DIY oil changes. They just screw the oil filter on way too hard. I'm also a little bit concerned, this is the new one, that because it was on so hard, if it wasn't done at the shop, they might not have changed the filter last time. So definitely, ready to throw a new filter in there. I had to borrow a tool to hopefully spin the old one off. So let's get that loosened up. And I'm glad I did it because I felt before I drained the oil, I checked to see if I could even get the filter off, and I couldn't. So top tip, just make sure you get the oil filter off so you're not stuck in a precarious situation one way or the other. So now we probably got what we need to do this, and gonna drain it right now. All right. Oh, I'm in second. Doesn't really like that, but we're up and going. The shifter feels, it feels happy. No major vibrations or anything out of it. The clutch feels good. I was kind of concerned about that. I did a couple pulls when I first bought it. You put it in third or fourth, mash your foot. Hopefully it doesn't slip. And again, that's just a quick test you can do to make sure the transmission's not shot. But yeah, it definitely, like I mentioned before, it has apparently that quicker steering rack, and you do feel it. It's not super pronounced just because the tires are probably a little bit older, but the rest of the suspension feels fine. There's no major clunks or anything like that. I still have a little bit of wheel noise on maybe one of the other ones. It doesn't feel like a wheel bearing, but the car does feel happy. It does feel healthy. The motor does sound a little better. I'm not sure if it's actually better from the oil change and just getting some temp into it. Also, the seating position in this, it's a little odd for me. There's a good bit of bolster in the back of the seat, but I'm sitting up high. I mean, it's just a classic Subaru type seating position. My arms don't really, I'm 6'2", my arms don't really fall right on the door panel. I can kind of rest it on the actual sill itself, but everything else, I feel like I'm missing another armrest or whatnot for normal driving. Do a little brake check, brakes feel good, but the steering is quick, and it does have enough pep. I would like to probably drive one of these with the turbo 2-liter. Like I said, I'm not a Subi guy. I'm not a Honda guy. I haven't driven a whole lot of Subarus or Hondas. But again, this feels like it should. That's really all I'm trying to do is baseline it. And, it's a stick, so you can't really have a bad time. It feels very similar to a second-gen Toyota RAV4 that I drove a couple months back. It just seemed light on its feet, peppy, and like it just wanted to go. And that's kind of the same feeling that I'm getting here. So I think that had some slightly nicer tires on it. So yeah, again, this is not a car to do any interesting pulls. You can't break the wheels loose or anything. So cruising around like I'm doing now is really about as good as the road test is going to be. I'll do some MPG tests later on, but for now, just want to make sure it's not pissing oil and everything's running like it should. All right, so made it back. No major issues. Phase 1 of the semi Saaburu restoration. The next thing I'm going to do is probably get a quote to get that heater core installed. I've done some YouTubing around. It seems like a fairly involved process depending on the years, but I've heard the 06s. Drop a comment below if you hear anything, or if you know these better than I do, obviously, that the 05, 06s, the condenser is easier to get to than the later models. So again, that's not confirmed. That's just what I've seen. So if you've liked the content, feel free to subscribe and like the channel. I do all kinds of cars. Obviously, my taste does not discriminate any brands, makes, or models. And again, this is the first Saab/Subaru that I've done. So check it out. Appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to subscribe. Thanks.